Hey, this is David Goldenberg from 11 Ads for Brands, and I want to talk about a crazy important question that a lot of people ask, and that is, what is the right time period for which I should be evaluating my ads? Over how much time, what look-back window in technical terms, suffices for me to evaluate my ad performance? And there's a whole bunch of different ones, and they serve different purposes. Okay, so we'll start with talking about what the different goals might be. And then based on that, we'll say which, look back window can be more appropriate for each of those. Okay, so first of all, let's look at the biggest picture window, right? Lifetime performance. What is this good for? When you look at lifetime performance, that allows you to see data at a high level that Amazon is not necessarily storing or giving you reporting on. And so if, for example, you need to set up a baseline to compare year over year, quarter over quarter, that kind of number, right? So that is a way to get that information. Likewise, if you need to see how a older campaign performed, even though now it's paused and it's been paused for, the last few months, the lifetime can also be a useful look back window, especially at the start of a year when year to date is not going to be so significant. If you're in January, February, year to date is just 1 or 2 months, right? But if you look at the lifetime, you can see last year or the year before. So that's the biggest window, lifetime. What about year to date? Similar uses, right? The utility of that again is going to depend on how your campaigns are managed. Have you got a lot of things paused? Is there seasonality? But broadly speaking, it's more useful for looking at historic data to see, well, did this keyword, for example, perform well for us in the past? Should we try it again in the future? If for some reason it got paused or got bid too low so that the sales dropped off, we want to reactivate that keyword. So by looking at the year to date, that allows you to do this historical research and find that out. It's also a little bit better. Why not use lifetime in that case? The idea is that if you use year to date, if you're again further on in the year, right? So let's say in Q2 at least, or Q3, 4, then that year to date information is more relevant than looking at historical data from 2, 3 more years ago, where the competition was different. They weren't bidding necessarily so aggressive. So you may have gotten a good ACOS, a good ROAS 2 years ago or 3 years ago. That doesn't necessarily represent the competition today, who may have lower pricing or more aggressive bidding, more highly performing ads, and so forth. Okay, so we've talked about lifetime, we've talked about year to date. What about shorter time periods, looking at the last 2 or 3 months of data? Okay, where this can be helpful is if you have a goal to try to figure out the performance for your low data keywords and targets. Okay, so to address the original question broadly, what's right time period or look back window? It depends on how much data you're getting, right? A keyword that gets 50 clicks a day, you'll have an answer on how it performs a lot faster as opposed to a keyword that gets 50 clicks a month, right? And so when you get something that has only 50 clicks a month, and many keywords are even further below that threshold, right? In general, most keywords don't even hit 50 clicks a month. So if you're trying to figure out what to do with keywords that are getting 30, 20, 10 clicks a month, right? So you might want to try to combine more data from a longer time period in order to figure out what is the pattern. Right? I generally recommend against doing anything on the first 10 or 20 clicks because it's so variable. Like, you got 2 orders on 20 clicks. Does that mean that you've always got a 10% conversion rate, or the next 20 orders might not get anything and really you've got a 5% conversion rate, right? So you can compare to your account average and figure out, usually we have a 10%. So if over here we've gotten, 2 orders on 20 clicks, this is going maybe in the right direction. But, unless you have significantly higher average conversion rates, 20, 30% on your ads, specifically on your ads, not the business reports, those are two very different things. The ads typically perform less well than organic and other kinds of traffic. So, if you're just getting, let's say, 10 or 15 clicks a month, then yeah, it makes sense to look at 2 or 3 months of data and try to figure out, what's my conversion rate, what's my revenue per click, and so on. If you're interested in revenue per click, by the way, what that's useful for, I am hoping to get another video up soon on that topic. It's very important because it affects your bidding, it affects your negatives, it has effect on your ability to rank organically. Okay, huge metric. So check that out over here. Hopefully add in a card, right, left, somewhere around, and you can learn more about that. So if you're evaluating low volume keywords, look at a longer period of time. What about the medium or high volume keywords, right? So for them, you can and should preferably be looking at a shorter time period because, again, things change over time. And ideally, you would just need to look at recent data, but in most cases, you don't have enough data in a short time period over the last 30 days, let's say, right? Over the last week, in order to really get an accurate picture of what is going on. So for the higher volume keywords, is going to really depend on what we're talking about higher volume, right? Is it like a category defining keyword? In brand analytics, is this one of the top 500 or top 1,000 keywords in all of Amazon, one of the top 500 or top 1,000 search terms on the whole website? For those, yeah, you know what, it makes sense to look at each week's performance, and you can be adjusting on that basis. I find it funny when you see tools say, oh, you should let us save you time and we'll manually change bids for you on a daily basis. Even keywords, I've thank God been able to work on some of the most competitive keywords on Amazon in the top 200. And even for those, you don't need to make bid changes on a daily basis. So, unless you're targeting face masks, which is like usually one of the top 10 or 20 most popular keywords on the whole website, what is it that needs daily bid changes? Except if we're talking about, day parting because something performs better in the morning or the afternoon, the evening, whatever. But putting that aside, you don't need to radically change bids within a week. Okay, I'm getting a bit off topic. The popular keywords. Okay, so it does make sense to look at last 30 or last 7. A slight variation on that, which I prefer, especially for higher priced items, which with regards to Amazon probably means anything over $50. Okay, and I'll explain why in a moment. Is that the higher the price is, the more consideration, right? The more people are hesitant to pull the trigger to complete the purchase. And so instead of clicking and buying on day 1, they buy on day 2 when the click happened on day 1. They buy on day 5, on day 10. Okay. And if you're looking just at, let's say, the last 7 days performance, but they're buying on day 10 and 12 and 13, you're going to overestimate ACoS because you're not taking into account all the sales that happened, right? And you can see that this happens all the time by, for example, turning off a keyword, and you'll see that sales keep on happening down the line. How is that possible that the ad is paused or the keyword is paused and you're still getting sales? That's because the click already happened and somebody bought further down the line. You can see this in charts on Amazon all the time. So a workaround look back window for that is to look at the last 4 weeks minus the most recent week, right? So you can select manually the last 28 days of data, but not the most recent 7. So basically 21 days of data from 8 days ago and beyond. Or you can look even at 4 weeks of data from 8 days ago and beyond. So that's a way to work around it. And all of these that we've talked about so far are to get a general idea on performance in the recent time period. But what if you want to know what happened since you made a bid change? Okay, suppose I made a bid change 10 days ago. Should I be looking at performance from 11 days ago and before? Right? Probably not. right? If I want to know how my bid change is performing, right? If my ACOS has gotten better or whatever. So I need to be able to compare those two date ranges. So I might want to download the data from beforehand, right? From 12 days ago and beyond, and then, or 11 days ago and beyond, and then from 10 days onwards to have that separately so I can compare and contrast, right? What happened to my cost per click? What happened to my ACOS? What happened to my impressions? Did I lose all the traffic, or am I maintaining, let's say 80% or more of the traffic after I've lowered a bit? Or if I've increased a bit, right? Am I getting more impressions? Am I getting the same amount of impressions, but just paying more per click, right? Driving up my ACOS for no tangible benefit. So in cases where you're trying to measure the impact of a bid change, so you need to look at when the bid change was made and basically look at the period since then and compare to an equal amount of days before then, right? So let's say 7 days before, 7 days after, 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after. Why am I saying specifically 7 days before or 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after? Because performance isn't the same on weekends and weekdays, right? For example, in the movie business, people go to the movies a lot more on weekends, right? We hear about opening box office weekend, right? But that's not just true for movies, that's true for all kinds of different things. Some people buy particular products when they're in the office. Some things get bought when people are at home, right? Anything that people want privacy for, they're not probably putting on their screen when all their colleagues are walking by. Conversely, if they're buying something for the office, coffee, they're buying office furniture, etc. So typically you'll see that during the daytime when people are in the office, your conversion rates would be higher, and during weekdays as opposed to weekends. So you want to look at full week increments as well. That's much preferable. Sometimes you don't have a choice, right? Especially around some seasonal things like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Prime Day, things like that. Valentine's Day is coming up, so that's clearly going to make an impact for anybody selling gifts, selling chocolates, anything to do with romance and couples and so on. So if you're trying to evaluate that, you need to look at that data differently. What you can do that's very helpful is you can go into reports and you can export your reports with daily data, right? By default, there's a radio button, one that's showing summary, and the other radio button shows the option to have daily. If you look at daily data, then it shows you, for example, each search term, how it performed for each day of your time period. So if you increase the bid on an important keyword, right, then you can get the search term report or the keyword placement report for sponsored brands, for example, and see, hey, am I getting more top of search now that I increased my bid, right? I want to get the premium placement. After my bid change, am I getting more of those impressions, right? So by looking at it with daily data in your report, you can just sort the date column from oldest to newest. And let's say your bid change was made, let's say February 2nd. So you look from February 2nd to the 8th. Am I getting that right? 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. Yeah. And see, is that working out the way that I had intended? And if not, right, maybe I need to increase a bit further, or I should be decreasing the bid. And similarly, if you have made a change to your listing, right? If you changed the main product image, for example, right, on a certain date, how is that affecting your click-through rates, right? So again, get the daily data and then compare before and after the change so you can see, hey, this was an effective change or wasn't an effective change, and I want to optimize further based on these results. Now, finally, there's also just yesterday or past few days, I wouldn't use these in general for any kind of a bid change to say that, well, my performance has been different yesterday or the day before. But what it can be useful to see is, are you getting impressions? Do you get impressions after making a change a couple of days ago, right? So not to evaluate are the sales happening unless you got really a lot of clicks and the sales aren't coming through. So that might be a reason to pause. But if you're just trying to launch on a particular keyword or category, ASIN, whatever it is, and you're curious about what the performance is, so in that case, you know, the last couple of days of data on their own can be useful to evaluate the effect of your performance. So is there one particular date range that is the best? No, it depends on what your goal is, right? It's like saying, what is the best saw? Well, what do you want to saw, right? What is the best drill? What are you drilling? Are you drilling teeth or are you drilling wood, right? So depending on your goal, you need to work backward from there to figure out what the right tool is, what the right method is. So we said lifetime and year to date can be useful for looking at historic data. Year to date, especially in Q2, 3, and onwards, is a bit more useful because you prefer recent data over older data. Okay, looking at 2, 3 years ago can be generally helpful to know if you're relevant for a particular keyword, but don't expect that you can get the same ACOS, etc. If you have keywords that are lower volume, right, and you want to see their performance over a longer period of time, again, so year to date can be helpful, but you know, preferably you'd be looking really at 2-3 months of data. Okay, depending on what's available, it varies by report and it varies in the interface, etc. And then if you're trying to evaluate higher volume keywords, preferably either last 30 or 4 weeks of data minus the most recent week, right? So from day 8 to day 35, excluding the most recent 7 days. So you have to pick those dates manually. And yeah, for really popular keywords, you can look at the performance over the last week. When I say really popular, really we're talking about the top 1,000 search terms on Amazon, even the top 500. Beyond that, you're optimizing without having a clear idea on what the pattern is. Like we said, weekend versus weekday, it's different. Okay. And there's just a lot of nuances. So don't be hasty. Don't blindly go with, oh well, it'll save me all this time on bid adjustments. If you're making bid adjustments on a daily basis for a specific keyword, it's usually too often. You can set up rules-based software that when your keywords hit a certain threshold, yeah, then it makes sense to make a bid adjustment. Okay, I should hopefully have a separate video in a moment to talk about how much traffic is enough. But just to talk about it, maybe briefly, as a rule of thumb, that is good for most sellers, based on average conversion rates from advertising, about 40 clicks is a good threshold to make a decision whether to pause a keyword or keep it running, depending on how many conversions you got. If your average conversion rate is 10% and you got 4 or more orders, right, after 40 clicks, okay, great, keep running. If you're at 0 or 1 order after 40 clicks, you should probably pause that. And if you're at 2 or 3 orders after 40 clicks, let it run a bit longer and try to see more data in order to figure out what the pattern is. But there's a lot more nuance to that, right? What if your conversion rate is higher? What if your conversion rate is lower? What if this is a very popular keyword that's vague, so typically you'll get lower conversion rates, right? There's a lot of different factors. Check out the other video on my channel about that. And if this is valuable to you, right, please hit subscribe. And that way the YouTube algorithm will suggest this in your home feed, in related videos more. Check out the channel for more great videos like this to learn more about Amazon advertising, sponsored brands in particular. Okay. And, like it, share it, tell people, hey, I'm getting value. I'm learning from 11 Ads for Brands and David Goldenberg. And if you guys want to improve your Amazon advertising, so you should check out his channel too. If you're looking for ad management, please get in touch. My email is DG for David Gabriel at 011adsforbrands.com. That's DG at 011adsforbrands.com. And of course, you're welcome to check us out at our website, 011adsforbrands.com. Take care.